All right. Welcome to the 7-on-7 and 5-on-5 Association podcast. This week, we are up for our fourth annual Gem State Shootout in the beautiful city and state of Boise, Idaho. Super excited to go out to this. This is one of my favorite ones on our circuit every single year. Always the last weekend of April. We have a lot of fun, usually really good weather. Got all the food trucks coming out, got the music, it's going to be an awesome scene and vibe. We're going to dive into the tournament and teams and players, but I'll get some introductions out of the way here. First up, we got national recruiting editor for 247 Sports, Brandon Huffman. Huff, how are you doing this week? How's the world travels going, my friend?
Living the dream, TB. I just got back from a few days in Arizona. I was down there for 7-on-7, went down to Brophy Prep to watch Ben Morrison's pro day. And today, we're recording this on Thursday, NFL draft day. And TB, I may be mistaken, but could the 7-on-7 Association see their first round draft pick tonight
Yes,
in
sir.
Emeka Egbuka,
Yes,
who I don't
sir.
anticipate sticking around long, but he might be the first old, like from the very first year,
Yep.
the 2018 when he was a freshman. If you remember, TV, we were at when it was still called Wilson High School. He was
Yeah.
wearing gold shoes and he was a freshman. And I know who he was, but like seeing him as a freshman that day at Wilson High School. And Courtney, man, what do you think? And he just got that big smile with his deep voice, and boy, he was excited. He's like, I got this kid for 3 years, and now Emeka will be going in the draft tonight in the first round. We could also see G. Scott go in the next couple of days. JT Tuimoloau, Josh Connerly, who came to a couple with Beach and has
Mhm.
played on that.
Mhm.
It's exciting times. Exciting time to watch the draft. Before we get started, I do want to make a statement here. Um, how did Shedeur Sanders' jersey get retired of Colorado before yours did?
I already sent in my complaint.
Mhm.
I already sent in my complaint to the school and let them know. I said, listen, for the integrity and credibility of the university, you have a guy that was 2 years, had made it all the way down to fifth string on the charts, was the backup on the scout team at one point, and you're going to retire Shador Sanders jersey over that? What are
I
we doing?
mean, you ain't hard to find, TB. I just the disrespect.
Yeah,
Deontay,
that's
what's
really
your
what it
take on
comes
that?
down to. I'm going to take the $2.50 I've been sending as an alumni to the NIL collective, and I'm pulling it. So let's see if they can sign a Travis Hunter after this.
I
There
There you
you
go.
think
go.
That's
I
why you're
think
out with the
next year,
Huskies.
I think next year he'll have a better opportunity considering Shador got in this year. I think his claim will be better next
They
year.
open up the floodgates. I mean,
There you go.
at
There you
this
go.
point,
It opened up the floodgates for sure.
So,
For
yeah.
like,
sure.
I'm thinking Cordell Stewart, Darian Hagan, Charles Johnson coming in relief to win the Orange Bowl for Colorado, Coy Detmer, Joel Klatt, Mike Muscati, Seppa Lufau, Taylor Barton, and Stephen Montez. Those nine should be next in line.
And
Start the
either
campaign.
call me biased, but I feel like you mentioned me like seventh or eighth there.
I was trying to go
Um,
chronologically. I was trying to go by like,
okay, okay.
eras.
Because I know you're about credibility. So see,
Mm,
that's all
yeah.
I've been talking about. And they just
That's
don't
why I went
understand
Seppo
it.
before Steven Montez, because he was a couple years ahead of him. So,
Yep.
I was just trying to I mean, Cody Hawkins, we're going to
Yeah.
Boise where Cody
Yep.
prepped, and, now he's coaching at Idaho State. But yeah, I mean, there's a Mount Rushmore of Colorado quarterbacks that you would be at Mount Rushmore watching, and I
Sure.
think that it's unfair.
And I mean, you mentioned Cody Hawkins, and there's some that just don't even belong in the discussion. So it's like, hey, guys, it's kind of like we know, like, hey, this guy's a scrub, like, not trying to clown anyone. Hey, you did your thing, but did you manage to have more jersey numbers in your career than you did playing snaps? Like so when we look at it, like that's a bar I set that is going to be tough to reach. So
Hey, TJ Finley, who is a quarterback, is at his fifth school in 6 years. Like we're in an era, and we will talk about 7-on-7, folks. But I mean, this is college football season. It's the NFL draft. It's that time of year. There are now guys playing college football that could literally make a life-size quilt of all the jerseys on their wall from the teams that they played for just in college. and they'd be
Yep.
comfortable because they would be big jerseys, and there's plenty of them to sleep under.
Yeah, it's a different era. We had the Cam McCormick came to some of our stuff. I mean, he was in
I
what,
think
like
you went to
year
high school at the same
19?
time as Cam McCormick, right?
Yeah. I think we were graduating opposing classes, schools, but yeah, it is pretty wild. And you're right. And the cool thing is seeing the draft, like to bring it back to what you mentioned with JT with Emeka. The cool thing about our circuit and our events is that we get to see these kids when they're in sixth grade and then eighth grade and then sophomores and then they go into college and then they go on to pro, and it's really fun. At our Avery Strong showcase, Bryce Young got his first offer as an eighth grader, going into his freshman year. So there are so many kids we look back at and see and go, man,
Oh,
we
and I would be remiss. We got to make a mention. I mean, the FCS guy who's getting so much buzz right now probably put together one of the single best performances I've ever seen at a showcase at an association tournament up on the Sammamish Plateau, or no, it was in Snoqualmie, and Efton Chisholm won the MVP on a Saturday, came to the Avery Strong Showcase on Sunday when it was still back in April, won every single rep, won MVP of that, had as good of a back-to-back weekend as I've seen. And so it's been cool to look at the draft diamonds and, when everybody's trying to find who's the next Cooper Cup. And I remember talking to Greg Hurd about that, who played with Cooper at Eastern, and he was a couple years older than him, he was on the national championship team. And he said, you know what? I hate when people say they're going to be the next Cooper Cup because Cooper Cup is one of one. But if you want to talk about a guy who could literally be the next Cooper Cup. And I mean, he broke most of his records at Eastern Washington. It is Efton Chisholm.
Mhm.
And, he's got some Avery trophies in his, among his many trophies, All American, I think 3-time All American. He could be getting drafted this weekend too. And I guarantee you, I mean, TV, you saw him a ton. DeAndre, I know you worked with him. That is a guy that when he gets on a roster, he ain't leaving a roster for a long
Yep.
time.
Yep.
One of my favorite players to watch on the 7 on. I mean, this kid's awesome. He sent me a graduation announcement from high school and for college. Just like one of the most humble, nice kids that you'll ever see. And he was a United too, because he was one of the rare guys that every other 7-on-7 team in the Northwest would be like, God, we freaking hate playing against him because
Yeah.
we can't stop him. And we've been doing this long enough where 7-on-7 guys like, hey, there's guys that play that aren't on your team that are good, and I'm like, no, no, no. My guys, my 19th best player is better than that team's best player.
Mhm.
He was the one that like united everybody, where they're all like, God damn, Efton Chisholm. Like,
Yeah. Can't
so
argue.
I hope his draft party is popping because I'm excited to see where he goes. And that's a kid that I think, Emeka's who he is, elite talent, one of the best receivers the state has ever seen. I mean, Taylor, you've been up in the Northwest, probably the best receiver the state produced since Reggie Williams. Um, and Mike Westbrook, who's taken his teams to a bunch of these tournaments, played with Reggie, but then coached Emeka. And he said, "Listen, I mean, Reggie is a unicorn. He was the most physically gifted player that ever played football in the state, but Emeka was a better receiver." And I don't think there's, and you played with Reggie, so you know what kind of unicorn he really was. But Emeka, to leave wide receiver university with all those records, his draft status starts. So it's pretty cool because it's circling it all back. I mean, you think about those first couple of years of the association, and you think, why does the Northwest need a 7-on-7 association? This isn't a state that's producing a bunch of talent. You could have 2, 3 potential first rounders. You could have 4 or 5 guys that played in these tournaments get drafted in the next 48 hours. And like you said, we saw them, some of them as middle schoolers, some of them as high schoolers. We're seeing guys that are playing that 3rd and 4th grade that are now playing years later in the biggest stages in college football and potentially getting drafted. And, they were on the field that I don't go watch at 9 in the morning because it's the 3rd and
Yeah.
4th graders.
Yeah.
But those 3rd and 4th graders become 10th and 11th graders.
Yeah, and we're watching them then, and you're right. We'd see matchups. G. Scott and JT played on the same team in a program, and then you had a Mecca playing a different program, and then you had Efton playing a different program. But they were all in our circuit, and they're playing in our tournaments against each other. So it's a really cool thing because we talk about it. Iron sharpens iron, and that's why each area growing out. I love Boise has really grown with the programs and teams, and it's great because one, the kids are just going and getting reps. In basketball, it's like going and just playing pickup games. You're just getting better. So they're playing, and then we've got that over in Seattle and in Portland, and that's where we get a chance to go around and see all of these kids and teams, see the young ones, see the current ones, see the sleepers, really evaluate the ones that are the high profile ones. So it's really fun for us to go and see that, and then to bring teams around. We're coming to Boise, but we got teams coming from Canada and Seattle and Oregon. So it's fun to get that mix, and we'll have more and more coming in. And I think that's what this is about. And we've talked about it. It's gotten away from it over the last few years, where it's become more about these trainers and them having a trophy behind them on the wall and their name being out there. And we're trying to get it back to, it's just about the development of these kids and the experience, and get them better, let them have fun. Yes, you want to win, but in every tournament, only one team finishes their last game with a win. Everybody else loses. So
Mhm.
part of that is, okay, you lost. How do you come back? What did you learn from it? How did you handle it? And the same way winning, because I watch teams win and they're running around and they're cussing at the other team and doing, all these things, instead of like, just go celebrate with your team. Like that, those are the things that have, we talk to college coaches every day. I mean, I do, but you live in that lane. And those are the kind of things that they ask. Talk about his character. I remember Portland State, when Nigel Burton was the head coach. I, after a tournament, sent to him on a DB, and I said, "Hey, this kid is awesome. I'm going to send you his highlights." And I'll never forget. He said, "Hey, send me the reps he got beat on, and send me the rep right after that, because I want to see how he responds after he gets beat. What does he do? Does he pout? Does he, point the finger, or does he come back even stronger?" So it's that kind of stuff that we're able to see and be talking with different colleges. We have our showcase coming up in a little over a month, and that's a great opportunity for kids. So we'll talk on that. We do a podcast for that one. Let's hop into this, talk on the 7-on. We'll get into the 5-on. Got to get our last introduction in here. We've got DeAndre Campbell. DeAndre is making his first appearance on our podcast that we're doing. I've talked to him about doing it now for a while. DeAndre was a receiver at University of Washington, played with the 49ers, and now is one of the top trainers in the Northwest, even on the West Coast. The area he comes from is a little bit soft, so I've had to harden him up as he's gotten in our
Never.
area. He comes from a soft place called Oakland, California. So we've
Right.
had to harden him up, kind of show him what's what out here on these mean streets of the association circuit. But DeAndre, welcome to the podcast. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good, man. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here to talk football. Excited for this upcoming weekend for the Gem State Shootout, and to just talk about some ballers, and continue, like you said just recently, man. Just continue to spread a good positive atmosphere for this game, for these kids, so that they can continue to take advantage of these opportunities. So excited to be here.
There you go. And
Also, before I shout out to Oakland, there's nothing soft about Oakland, just so we're clear.
I
Want
love
to make sure you
it.
make
I
that
love
clear.
Except
it.
their
But yeah,
attendance at Oakland A's games.
that's
Too soon. Too soon.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm
you're
an Angels
hitting
fan. I'm
hard.
an Angels fan. Seahawks or Mariners fan and A's fans. I'm sorry. There's no. It's
it's
all no holds barred.
yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's really terrible.
So let's hop into this and talk some of these programs, some of the kids, and we're going out to Boise, Idaho. So it's only right that we start off talking about some in-state programs and some programs in Boise or the surrounding areas. Huff, let's start off with the Boise Tropics. You got James Clyde, who runs that program, and have known James now for a couple years, and love what he has done with that program as he got it put together, and has grown it to having teams at all the different age divisions. They've had a lot of talent come through. They got quite a bit of talent on their high school team and down to their youth teams. He's got some really good coaches and people involved in his program. Love what he is doing with them. They're one of my favorite uniform kind of swag sets and pieces and logos. Just awesome. If you haven't seen them, go look them up. They're really cool. Look forward to seeing James and his crew this weekend. Huff, talk a little bit about the Boise Tropics.
Yeah. They have kind of a good chunk of players that are from Rocky Mountain, from Eagle, have been around for a couple of years. I think they were out in Hawaii a couple of weeks ago. The Boise Tropics going to the actual tropics. But some good talent on their team. Tight end Drew Beard, the top 10 player in the state of Idaho, out of Rocky Mountain. They've also got Noah Burnham, who's a speedy back out of Eagle High School. Henry Nelson was the MVP at the Polynesian Bowl Combine a couple of weeks ago, one of the three quarterback MVPs at it. And then Kawhi Chamberlain, who is from Oregon, who I actually saw at the Gen State Showcase last summer in Idaho, where he's one of the linebacker MVPs. He's got a couple of offers already. He's also running with the Tropics as well. So a pretty good squad. Tyler Weaver's a big tight end, the 2027. So a couple of good younger 2027s on that team with some 2026s as well that are getting recruited.
Next program out of Eagle, Idaho is NVT, North Valley Thunder. They've got some players in their own right. They got two high school teams that are going to be in the tournament. They got a freshman team, have had them in at least last year. I can't remember 2 years ago or if last year was their first year, but a program that represented themselves really well last year. I'm excited to see them again this year. Talk about the North Valley Thunder, the boys out of Eagle.
Yeah, a heavy team with the Eagle players who were the state runner-ups last year. They've Austin Ramsey's their quarterback, who helped Eagle get to the 6A state championship game. Then Zay Wright, who's a DB that I know there's a lot of positive buzz around him as a defensive back. And if I remember right, too, they did have an offensive line, or they had a team at 5-on-5
Yeah,
last
five
year.
on five. Yep.
One of their offensive linemen on that team ended up signing with Iowa State. So Eagle High School has always got some good talent. They've had a couple of pretty good quarterbacks historically. Taysom Hill and Tanner Mangum both played at Eagle High School. And I feel like I'm forgetting somebody else. Goodness gracious. Taylor Kelly, I believe, was also at Eagle High School, who played at Arizona State. So a nice little tradition. Austin Ramsey's kind of that next guy that is, been, I think this will be his third year as a starter. And like I said, took him to the state championship game last year. So, good, solid program out of the host city.
It's really interesting watching Idaho emerge and really kind of blossom. And Boise is the city and hub in the state, but there's a lot of talent around. You go out to Twin Falls, Pocatello, other areas. It's really cool to see. And you mentioned some of the names. I remember always thinking about Southern California, and then I got to Northern California when I was at JC and saw how much talent was there. And over the years now, you see how much talent it comes out of Northern California. And I feel like I'm not comparing Idaho to California, but I'm using that comparison because there is a lot of talent in Idaho, Boise, surrounding areas. And you start looking on college rosters and kids that are going and making an impact on college rosters, and then going to the NFL and watching these teams go around the country and compete against people is really cool to see. There is a lot of talent. And the other thing is, these teams are really well coached. Watching these Idaho teams, they are really well coached. You see some programs, especially Cali. We were just there in San Jose, did LA a couple weeks before, and you'll see a lot of talent, but it's a bunch of dots that aren't connected. There's no structure, no organization to it. So I always look forward to seeing the Idaho teams in this Boise tournament because of that. DeAndre, you've been involved in this now for 2 years with us. You've seen these different teams and programs and talent. Talk about that, what you've seen in the 7-on space, just as you've kind of, Huff and I have very skewed lenses. We've been in this so long. As you've come in kind of fresh meat, for lack of a better definition, talk about what you're seeing in the 7-on space, how the importance of talent compared to the importance of coaching and structure.
Yeah, no, I think definitely when last year being my first year being a part of the association, going to different places, but then going to Idaho and then seeing the Idaho teams, you do see a certain level of talent, but then you see a certain level of coaching, whether it's scheme, whether it's, how the players are talking on offense and defense, their ability to be in the right place at the right time, knowing their assignment. And just a different level of accountability. I vividly remember last year, seeing one of the teams, I think, and they'll be here this week in rain. I remember them coming out with literally 7 or 8 guys. They just had 7 or 8 guys, and they came out and they were running their offense to perfection. They were also making sure they were making the right calls on defense with no breaks, no complaining, no nothing. And it was just, along with seeing the Boise Tropics play, as well as, 209 or 208, like it was just, seeing the rate at which they were playing and how they were, locked in, making plays. It wasn't about individual, it was more about team. It was just really cool to see. And I'm excited to see it this upcoming weekend with what we have coming out for a Gym State Shootout.
You mentioned this program, Huff. This is one of the bell cow programs in the Northwest, and we've seen kids that were played in it, playing on college rosters and playing in on teams in the playoff, catching touchdowns and making plays. Talk about rare slash 208 Platinum out of Nampa, Idaho, run by Just Jackson, who has been a huge reason, if not the main driving force, to the growth and exposure in the state of Idaho for kids and colleges coming in. You mentioned the showcase he runs. Talk about Just and the Rare 208 program.
Yeah, Justin Shane have done a phenomenal job of really just, attracting so much talent. They've had, Kenyon Sadiq, who's going to be the starting tight end at Oregon, played a big role for the Ducks this last year. Gatlin Bear, Tal Johnson, a number of players, and they've done such a great job this year. They've got like Ryan Brecky out of Hawaii. They've got Hudson Lewis from Timberline, and just done a really good job of getting good players, not just from Idaho, but from Montana as well. Reed Harris, who's starting at Boston College. We saw him at the Northwest Nine back in 2021. And, we were seeing him that day and thinking to myself, my goodness, he could throw the ball, but God, that's an NFL body as a
Yeah.
linebacker or a tight end. And he played with Rare the next spring. They had lined him up and Kenyon Sadiq as well. Even had Gatlin Barrett a couple of tournaments. So they've done a really good job in the state of Idaho and really with the Gem State Showcase too. I mean, that's been such a great event. This will be my fifth year going to it when I go to it in June. It started out at Northwest Nazarene, or I'm sorry, it started out at College of Idaho and it's been at Northwest Nazarene the last couple of years, and it's had produced some really, really talented players at it. So I love what those guys do. And Shane, Ohio State is still wide receiver U.
I was going to say, I know you and Shane have that LSU Ohio State debate. DeAndre, you were a receiver. The receivers that Ohio State has had and LSU over the years. Which one you can you got Huff over here, you got Shane over here. Which one are you going with? Which one do you lean to?
Um, Man, I think,
You got to go historical. Don't do recency bias here, DeAndre. You got to look from
I
over time.
over time between those two schools, historically, you probably go Ohio State.
Probably go Ohio State.
Probably go Ohio State.
Give me
There's a
who
reluctancy to
matches
say
Chris Carter.
either, but yeah, no, especially even the last several years. We talked about Emeka, right? And when he came to Ohio State, it was a fully loaded roster of receivers, and who came out of there? Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, just to name a few.
Jackson Smith-Njigba,
Smith and Jigba.
Marvin Harrison.
Terry McLaurin had literally, I think he was either there
Yeah.
or he had just left, so it like he came into a stable of receivers and to be able to hold his own against those guys. And then they're all first rounders, it's just been first round
Don't get me wrong. Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are absolute dudes. Malik Neighbors is
yeah,
a dude.
they've been able to produce a lot of great receivers the last couple of years. I know Coach Hankerson is the receiver coach over there. And they've been able to do some great stuff over there, man. But yeah, I think Ohio State, they got it. I think they got
Chris
it.
Carter, Terry Glenn, Joey Galloway.
Yeah.
You go way back.
Hartline too. He's done a
Hartline
great
is a
job.
player too.
He's
I
done a great
will
job
I will
of
say
building
this,
that
D.
program.
We're gonna work you into the becoming a politician with your answers, because right there, see, you're seeing Huff and you're hearing his pitch, but this weekend, who are you going to run into now? We just mentioned you're going to run into Shane, and he's going to come up to you. He's going to be unhappy with your answer. He's going to start giving you his reasons why. And you can't be like the wind and just kind of flip flopping and changing. You got to learn those answers. You'll hear Huff in the way he goes about the predictions at the end. Now we always have technical difficulties for some reason,
Weird.
but he has learned to be a politician. So you went straight into it. So now Huff knows you're a sucker. See, now he knows he's got
Hey,
you. Any
hey,
debate, he knows he's got you in his hip pocket, dude.
TB,
when
but
you
look,
guys,
it's not even that. It's the fact that like I've been studying wide receivers like year after year after year. Like I'm paying attention to who are the top receivers in the NFL, who are the top receivers in college, like who was getting drafted the highest. And there's been a lot more, I won't say a lot more, but there's been over time, there's been more consistency of receivers in the first round from Ohio State, from what I remember. But not to negate any of the receivers that have been killing it, at LSU. I think that era in LSU, from a receiver standpoint and the consistency standpoint, started like in the Odell time range. And then you just saw more and more receivers, Odell and Jarvis. And then it came from there. But I feel like Ohio State was consistent before that, but not negating the work that LSU receivers have done as well. So that's
DeAndre,
just,
when you
that's
played
all that
at
is.
LSU, do you remember who the receivers were?
Odell and Jarvis.
Yeah. So there's been, a good run at
Yeah.
LSU. And I mean, same with Ohio State with Olave and Wilson, and Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison. But I think where Ohio State gets, and I know we got completely off topic, but Shane, you need to tune into this because I am making my historical facts. You go back to the Chris Carter to, Joey Galloway, Terry Glenn. I know I missed David Boston. Like, if you just go over a 30 to 40-year window, I mean, remember, Chris Carter was a Hall of Famer, first ballot. The guy he was officially coined the man. All the man does is catch touchdown passes. Like in an era where, he was a lot like Larry Fitzgerald, where you don't appreciate how good of a player he was until his career was done. You're like, good Lord, that guy was productive. He just happened to play at the same time that another guy named Jerry Rice was playing the game, who, was getting all the attention. But I go, the historical scope definitely gives it to Ohio State. But the last 15 years, LSU is creeping up. So Shane,
Yeah.
we'll continue this debate and you can buy the beers.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it every time we get into it, and that's what's fun. And we mentioned the circuit; those are the fun things. We get to go around and build relationships and meet people in different areas, have conversations, and then they come out to our tournament in Seattle or down to LA or to the Bay, come out to Portland. It's fun seeing people as we travel around, and you get to see them playing against different programs, going to different areas. We have college visits that we tie in with all of our tournaments. A lot of the out of area teams are coming in doing a Boise State visit this weekend while we're in Boise. When we did Portland, they go down and see Oregon State, Portland State. We did our Bay Area one teams were able to go over to Stanford, Cal, San Jose State, Sac State, UC Davis. So I love having that tied in and yeah, we get time to build relationships with people and have a lot of fun. So it's cool to see. And this is an ongoing debate that I'm not sure will ever be resolved. I think we'll keep bringing it up, but definitely it's that race where it's like Ohio State had the lead, but LSU is closing the gap and has been running faster. But Ohio State all of a sudden then starts going faster and taking off. So it's cool. But with Emeka, I'll sway over there for right now, just because that's family business right there, having an association guy go and tear it up. So, couple programs to mention in our high school division, the PAC out of Boise, Idaho. This is the first tournament they've ever been in of ours. They've got a high school team and they got two 14U teams. I'm excited to see them. And that's what these tournaments are, Huff. We talked about this on our last podcast. There's the programs and teams we know about coming into it, and then there's always new ones. And it's a chance for us to come in and see them and say, okay, what are you about? Let's see how well you're coached your kids are. Let's see if they're respectful. Let's see how your coaches conduct themselves and how they scheme on X's and O's, how the parents act on the sidelines or up in the stands. It's a chance for us to get to meet people, see them, see kids, and there's always those pleasant surprises that we see and go, man, have you seen this? And we'll come over and go, hey, watch this kid. You see him running his routes, or you see him on defense. DeAndre, we've had a lot of those conversations too of seeing people we knew about, and then seeing some we didn't know about that all of a sudden jump on radars. And this is a good opportunity for programs like the Pack to come in and make a name for themselves. We got the 509 boys out of Prosser, Washington. They were in our Seattle tournament in January, coming to this one. Going to be fun to watch them compete.
Hey,
One,
has anybody from Prosser ever done anything in Boise?
yeah, I would say there was a left-handed QB that was decent. Like we go back to my retirement jersey at Colorado, getting kind of screwed over on that by Shador. At Boise State, there was a guy who, had I been there and competed against, it's a toss-up of who would have been the starter, who would have, ended up being the guy. But yeah, lefty by the name of Kellen Moore
I
ended
was
up
just
having
about
a
to
pretty
say,
good career for Boise
yeah.
State. Pretty good career.
Former four-star Seattle.com. Shut up, DeAndre. Nobody cares about us ranking you as a two-star. I know I hear about that every weekend. Speaking of Boise and people that still complain, every time I'm in Boise, I run into Keith Price. And whenever anybody says that rankings don't matter and stars don't matter, they're lying. DeAndre still gives me grief. Keith still gives me grief. Every time I see him at the camp, hey, Huff, we got to talk about when you had me as a three-star in high school. Man, I walk so DJ Uyangalele and Josh Rosen could run and be five stars. And I'm like, yeah, here we come. So you never quite get over it.
It's understandable. It's right. It's
But
understandable,
we're here
Huff.
to talk about Kellen Moore being a four-star and how we were the only ones in the industry that got that. That's just the real moral of the story here. And I
Yeah.
don't do rankings anymore. I'm just a recruiting reporter. Plausible deniability, baby.
The funny
But
thing
the
about the
pack,
rankings is that people will go highlight like one kid that is like, and 247, oh, they didn't even have him ranked, or they had him, and I'm like, out
the
of
number one pick
tens,
tonight was not rated out of high school.
but it's like out of tens of thousands of kids over the years. Let's go over how many you were right. Of course, you can pull one that like everybody missed on, or yeah, they had this kid underrated. Some guy will be in the NFL and they're like, and he didn't even have a star, and all these people missed on him. And it's like, okay, let me go to your job. In baseball in the major leagues, all stars fail 7 out of 10 times when they're at bat.
They're Hall of
What are
Famers.
we talking about? How many? Let's go look at the history of weathermen and weatherwomen, and let's see how many times they missed on the weather. I can tell you every tournament weekend we have, because every time I hear it's not going to rain, I know what's coming. So,
Why was the greatest player in NFL history a seventh rounder? That means the Patriots screwed up six previous draft picks. I mean, if he was that great, why didn't they draft him early?
yeah,
So we're
that
not.
that frustrates me when I hear people saying that. I mean, Huff, you're a good friend, and I think the best in the biz. But I mean, Greg Biggins, I go back a long time with him, and he's a really good dude. And I know how hard you guys work. And of course, it's like, yes, there's going to be some kids that blossom late, or that just for whatever reason. But that happens. It's just that's life. But like, how many of you guys are accurate on and you guys see? So hearing people give one example to justify why they're not getting their rank or their whatever it is. And I'll say this for Huff, people listening, parents, kids, whatever it is, stop with the like, no one's respecting me. I'm getting slept on. It's this, or think these people have a vendetta against you, or they're just trying to screw you over. Just keep working, just stay plugging away, and things will pop through. Sometimes you have to go a longer route, a harder route. That's the process. I mean, you just mentioned it, Huff. I mean, look at Brady getting all these people drafted over him and having to sit there. Aaron Rodgers was a guy I trained and came through our stuff. And he's a Northern Cal kid, had lived in Oregon for a little bit, but he had to sit there. We've all seen that video of him, looking, feeling some type of way in the green room as other people getting drafted, and he's going down on the board. I think a lot of those NFL franchises regretted not drafting him, but that's
Mhm.
that's the process. So just to kind of put a bow on it, I think for everybody, just stay in your lane, keep working. Don't get caught up in all the other stuff, because that ends up hurting your cause more than it helps. I promise you that, from knowing the people in this industry that are doing this type of stuff. They're human beings, and they're professionals, but they're human too. So when you're taking shots at them, whether like directly calling them out by name or implying something or just throwing stuff out there, they talk. These guys talk amongst each other. College coaches talk, us trainers and circuit and event people, media. So just do things that help your cause and don't go against it. Zero is
Keep
not
the
the
main
worst
thing the
number
main
you can
thing,
be at. You
guys.
can be in the negatives.
Yeah, keep the main thing the main thing.
Yep.
The
So
pack.
speaking of the main thing, let's talk
Boise
about.
Timberline. I believe it's a Timberline high school team. Jack Brandt, who is the quarterback there, one of the top quarterbacks in kind of the Big Sky area. Quarterback, I believe Hudson Lewis, who usually plays for Rare, will be playing with them on Sunday. He's got a track meet. I think he was one of the fastest football players in the state of Idaho. But Jack Brandt and Hudson Lewis are a pretty good tandem there that I've seen on the 7 on circuit. We saw them in January up at the Space Needle Shootout back in, or no. What's the January one? Is the Space Needle Shootout?
Yeah, space.
Yeah,
Yeah, space shootout. Yep.
Battle in Seattle's Memorial Day,
Yep. Yep.
which we're
Um,
only a month away from TV.
Yeah, there we go, buddy. And then the
Wow.
showcase the next weekend. Huff triple threat. We've talked about OGs in the industry. Steve Martinez, I go back, I was texting with him yesterday, go back all the way to the Store More Sheds days where they came out and they kept coming to these tournaments and they'd go win it or make a championship or do really well. And people are like, who is this team? Where are they coming from? But Steve was bringing, and that was his first go around with this with his first son, one of many quarterbacks that have come through and had good high school careers and gone on to college. Steve has got that program blossoming. They've got teams at all the divisions. They're into the tackle space now. Talk about triple threat out of Meridian and Steve Martinez and crew.
Yeah, first shout out to Nick Martinez. Had a great spring at Boise State, part of their 2025 class. Believe he didn't throw an interception in the entirety of spring ball. Maddox Matson took him to the playoffs last year. He's got that job firmly entrenched, but don't be surprised if Zeke makes himself a candidate when Mad Dog is done. There's another Martinez brother, like I said, he's a younger one. And so this team kind of hit hard by graduation, won their share of tournaments, hit hard by graduation, but historically have been one of the best teams at just about every tournament. I mean, I think they've won tournaments in Washington, they won tournaments in Oregon, they've won tournaments in Idaho that you've hosted. So, a team that it's not a team, it's a program. They've got good youth teams and those guys that we talked about earlier. Those third and fourth graders become 10th and 11th graders in a few years.
They're really good in their youth program. I know in some years programs have a really strong senior class. Some years they're down, but their younger classes are coming up. The good ones just stay consistent with kids coming through, but there's always the cycle of sometimes you just have a better crop than other times. I know that triple threat is solid across the board, competitive for all the age divisions. I would fully expect that at least one of the age divisions, a championship will be going to triple threat this weekend. We'll see. Huff, you'll talk about that in the predictions at the end. Hopefully, our crew is working on the technical difficulties to iron those out. This will be the first podcast in 2 years that we would be able to get a clear prediction from Huff. For some reason,
Mhm.
it just always fails right at the end. But yeah, that's so now let's talk about a couple of the programs coming in from outside of the area. We've got War out of Western Washington, Puyallup, Tacoma, Seattle area, run by Rob Mason. And Rob, we talked about Steve being an OG. Rob, we've mentioned many times, is an OG in the game, doing a great job with this program and the kids. So fun to watch. I'd recommend uh, any coaches or people running a program, go watch War play and go watch Rob coach and go watch how he interacts with his kids. Go watch how he strategizes on things. That's the way it should be done. He's a really good X's and O's coach, but he's a great mentor with the kids. He gets excited when they make plays, but he keeps it positive when they throw an interception or get beat or drop a pass. It's just done the right way. That's all I can say is I recommend going and watching and see how it's done. And while you're there watching, you're going to see some really, really good players. Obviously, the headliner in this group is their quarterback who has multiple D1 offers to high level schools like Miami and Oregon and Washington, I believe USC. And he had some offers as an eighth grader,
Yeah.
started as a freshman at one of the powerhouses in the Northwest. Huff, talk about War.
Yeah, AG Tuivasa-Vai's quarterback at Grand Capacian was the SPSL Player of the Year as a freshman. Offers from Oregon and Washington have come in since the season started. our season ended. Arizona State, Miami were his first two offers. He will be one of those rare 4-year starters at a school that has had some pretty damn good quarterbacks. Josh Wood, who was there previously, now at Idaho after being at Fresno State,
Dylan Morris.
engineered one of the greatest wins I think the state of Washington's ever seen in a high school game. Dylan Morris, who started for a couple of years at Washington, was also there. And AJ has a chance to kind of shatter their records. So he's a guy to watch. But you've got a lot of other talent on the team. Jay Salas, who's also at Graham Kapowsin. You got Moose, who is at Emerald Ridge. I know there's other names I'm forgetting because it's been one of those weeks where there's a billion things going through my mind. But with War, they kind of took we were in LA last month and they had to make a choice because just the way that Zort sorted it, because it's automated, they had to either play the 15U championship team. Now, mind you, it's an all 15U team, it's an all freshman team. And they play with that same 15U team in the high school division. So they won the 15U bracket, but had to stop playing in the high school because the times conflicted. Well, they go to Vancouver a couple weeks ago and decide this time they're going to go play in the high school bracket and gave up. I believe they won their semifinal game, would have been in the championship game, but passed up the opportunity because they wanted to go try to win a high school division trophy. So this is a team that, they're a good 15U team, but they're a problem in the high school ranks as well.
Yeah, absolutely. D, we watched that freshman game, War and Wipe Me Down, and that was one of the best games in 7-on I've ever seen, just the back and forth. What have you seen with this War team and program so far this year?
Yeah, no, like oh, sorry, 1 second.
D is on mute, so this is the technical difficulties. I think the bots thought
See,
it
it
was
happens.
prediction time for Huff, so they just said, "Okay, we're going on mute. We're going with this." But
It happens
Huff,
to greater men than me.
we'll come back to D. Let's talk about a couple of the other programs that are coming in from out of town. You got Gridiron coming in from Tacoma, Washington. DeQuinn Evans runs that program. They got a really good 7-on team, some headliner players, and then 5-on-5 is where they have won a lot of tournaments and are coming out bringing their 5-on crew against a loaded 5-on-5 circuit or tournament that we're going to talk about. So talk a little bit about Gridiron and then also White Me Down Boys. They've won tournaments at the freshman and the high school level. They have different teams loaded with talent. They're coming out in full force. One of the odds-on favorite, if not the odds-on favorite, to win the high school division, probably freshman division too. Talk about those two programs and some of the players on those teams.
Yeah, Gridiron, they've got Jabez Boyd, quarterback, who was a pretty electric player at Life Christian Academy. I believe those two teams played in the championship game in Vancouver 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So some good history with those two teams, and now they're taking their talents from Washington to Idaho. Will both be threats. Wipe Me Down, Henry Cabales, one of their standout tight ends, just committed to Arizona last weekend, so he's headed to the Big 12. They've also got Jack Severs, who Wisconsin has an official visit coming from him. Lance McGee, who Boise State is doing a good job of recruiting themselves and getting him in for an official visit, also there. So a lot of good Washington talent on those two teams.
Yeah, a lot of talent. Is Jack Severs, is he a 4-star? He 3-star or 4-star?
He's a 4-star on the composite, yeah.
Yep, 4-star. So there's a ton of talent there. I'm excited to see them mix it up with these Boise and Idaho teams and the talent. We're gonna hop into 5-on here, but to look at some of the other programs coming into this tournament, you've got the first tournament. We'll have the Boise Brave in. Another out of area team that we have coming in is Akatsuki, which is an Olympia, Washington team. They're a freshman team. You've got Rain out of Boise, Idaho. John Lammers started that program. He's one of the OGs in the industry and in Idaho. Goes back to the old Evolution days, which was the first. Them and Stormore were the first programs in Idaho that were going on the circuit. So cool to see that. John's passed it down to Nick Lyons to run that program now as his kids are out of it. So shout out to John Lammers, really good dude. You got TF Elite, which is Twin Falls, a couple hours away. They're making their first appearance in our tournament. You have at the middle school division, you have the Cats out of Spokane, Washington. Ryan Bradeen runs that program. They've done multiple of our tournaments. Really good program. They're going to be in our Spokane tournament as well, and Seattle end of the year. Excited to see them. You got Elevate out of Meridian, Idaho. They've been in a few of ours. One I'm excited to see, and I got to give a shout out. We've talked about, my Colorado QB days. Now let's go to my Washington QB days. We've got BTA making their first appearance in our circuit. Their youth teams, 9U, 11U, and 13U team, but Cody Pickett started up and runs that program. He's got his boys in it and just helping the kids. I was out there last week watching him coach it up, and he's doing his thing. Cody, one of the best QBs and just overall players to ever play at the University of Washington. Coaches screwed me over there too. If they would have not been biased and have their reasons, we'd be talking about me doing all that. But truly, Cody, it was amazing, like to watch him as a player, one of the most talented, just size, athletic ability, strength, playmaking, toughness, had a separated shoulder, would get shots and go in and play, put up huge numbers, was an awesome teammate, fun to play with, and it's cool to see now his kids in it in our circuit and coming out and competing and to watch him coach. So excited to see BTA. And I asked him, I'm like, Cody, thank you for the shout out Barton Training Academy. I obviously made a real mark on you to name your program after me, but BTA actually stands for Bout That Action. So that tells you, he's Cowboy Cody. His dad was a like headliner cowboy. What is it? He did all the stuff wrangling
Yeah, the
and
rodeo.
yeah, the rodeo stuff. And so Cody comes from that background, but then he also kind of has the other side to him. And so it was funny to see Cody, always a very entertaining guy to be around and
Isn't he
talk
also like a state
to.
champion basketball coach too?
Yeah, he's been coaching. He coached girls and boys, and he's done all of it, which is funny because I didn't ever see him really getting into coaching because as a player, he was just always just so good and so talented that a lot of times that personality doesn't really go into coaching because they more like, hey, just do it. Why can't you just do it like I did it? But I think he just kind of got that itch, and once he got into it, realized how good he is at it and how much they need it. Seeing some not great coaching, and he stepped in and made a big impact on all of them. So I'm excited to see BTA out there in the youth divisions. We've got Rogue Squad out of Meridian, Idaho, making their first appearance. We got BTP, big time players out of Calgary, Alberta. So Keon Raymond, shout out to him. He does a really good job with his program. Excited to see them. We've got Rise coming out of Puyallup, Washington. Michael Westbrook does a really good job with that group. You mentioned some of their players that have come through their program. They've got some real headliners, QB receiver at their high school groups that are as good as you'll find nationally anywhere. And then at the 10U, Idaho Express making their first entry into one of our tournaments. So from a 7-on standpoint, those are the crews coming. I wanted to mention one thing. We talked about Boise Tropics and I got distracted on some, but a couple other players to mention before we flip the script here to 5-on-5. You've got Noah Burnham, a running back out of Eagle High School, 1,200 rushing yards. Really excited to see him in the 7-on space and kind of how that translates from the running back spot in tackle to 7-on and how he is in the passing game. Right. Riker Clyde, DB out of Rocky Mountain High School. He had 2 picks last year on the top-rated defense in Idaho. One of them was a pick 6. Excited to watch him mixing it up against the receivers this weekend. And then the 2 tight ends, Drew Bird, Tyler Weaver, 6'5", 220, 6'5", 225. Tight ends and 7-on are kind of underrated as far as what they bring to the table in a passing attack. We've watched Big 12 the last few years with their 5-star tight end that they bring in from Utah, and what an impact he makes on a 3rd and 6. You know where they're going and you still can't stop it. So tight ends can make a big impact in 7-on, and obviously in 11-on are very valuable. So to kind of wrap it up on 7-on. Excited to see that. Predictions. We already had our technical difficulties. So Huff, I don't even think we get to those. We just skip it for this week.
Yeah.
For some reason, it just always happens when Huff gets right to his predictions, game scores, MVPs, all that. Just
I
never
even
works.
charged my AirPods to make sure we got it right. But yeah, it's probably best that for the sake of time, we move on to 5 on
Just
5.
move on. So 5-on, I know Huff, you're really excited about this. You love the 5 on, and especially the chance to go see these big boys in person competing. And we've got a loaded slate for 5 on. Now, 7 on goes both days, Saturday, Sunday. Saturday's pool play, Sunday, a single elimination until a champion. 5 on 5 is Sunday only. They come in, play their pool play, get seated, and then go to elimination. Now, our tournaments over in Seattle, Vancouver, Portland, we have all the age divisions coming up. For this one out here is just our high school division, but it is loaded. We've got OFFA, OFFA out of Utah, Salt Lake City, but kind of greater Utah area, run by Will Kofi, and they've got stallions across the board. You've got Powerhouse Training out of Pleasant Grove, Utah, run by Toonie Canuch. Excited to see them. This will be my first time seeing them. You've got Elite Prodigy Training out of Rigby, Idaho. Nate Holloway doing a good job with that program. Gridiron is coming out from Tacoma, Washington. DeQuinn Evans had mentioned him in 7 on, but 5 on is their specialty. He was a D lineman himself, so that's really his signature. In the Trenches Academy out of Boise, Idaho, you got Jake and Josh running that program and helping put this tournament together and get some of these programs. You'll see both of those guys out there, high energy, positive vibes. Their kids are really well coached. In the Trenches will be a favorite to come home with the title. And then you got Big 12 performance coming out of the Vancouver, Washington / Portland, Oregon area, run by Rich Moreno. And they have historically had dude after dude after dude. There was one time we looked at their line and everyone was like Oregon commit, Notre Dame offer, SC off. It was just everybody. So the 5-on-5 group is going to be really loaded. Huff, talk about these groups and what
Yeah.
you're most looking forward to seeing. We'll talk about them specifically, but just kind of overall what you're looking forward to seeing with this.
Yeah, Big 12, Carter Paul, Josh Christensen are two of the guys that Rich Moreno's been really high on this offseason out of the state of Oregon. A couple of guys that Carter Paul, I believe, at Lake Ridge, was at Westview, in Portland, now over at Lake Ridge. Jackson Barber's another guy that is kind of on the rise. Mac Olson, they got a youngster, Colby Walford, that he speaks highly of from Gridiron. You've got the Lavatai brothers that are there. You've got, quite possibly the best freshman O-line, D-line tandem in the state of Washington. Aiden Havili, who got his first offers at the Avery Showcase last year as an eighth grader. He is a outstanding defensive lineman, 2028, who is out of Eastside Catholic. And then you've got Ofa out of Live Christian Academy as well. They're both freshmen. So some really good linemen. And then Aiden Bullinger, who's started for the last 2 years at Grand Cataston, protected AJ's blind side this year, starting to bulk up a little. I know that DQ has had him on kind of a weight gaining plan. He started as a freshman despite being only about 220 pounds, but really good length. And now he's starting to fill out a little bit. So some really good young talent for Gridiron as well. And then you start making your way a little bit more into, Idaho within the trenches. You've got Jax Tanner, Bombers, he's known, one of the top interior line prospects in the country. He's got 30 plus offers. He's kind of focusing on a handful of schools. Michigan has been really high on him. He was at Oregon last weekend. He was at USC. He was at North Carolina, the number 2 player in the state of Idaho in 2026. We saw him last year. He was outstanding at this last year. So he's certainly a guy to watch. Mason McKenna, Bora High School is another one. And then Rocky Weatherspoon plays over at Fruitland High School, which is home to the number 1 player in the state, and Kelvin Obot, who is just named a top 5 this week. Michigan, USC, Utah, Oregon, and Nebraska. So Rocky's a little bit under the radar there, but Fruitland, over there on the border of Oregon and Idaho, got a couple of players. And then Jordan Gross, who played for the Carolina Panthers and played at the University of Utah as the head coach there. So you've got some dudes in the trenches, and Rocky Witherspoon could have a chance to kind of break out. Zeke Tune, another guy, 2027 guy that's worth watching. And then you go into the eastern part of the state. You mentioned Elite Prodigy, EPT. You've got Carter Apelu, who has been a player that I've seen for a couple of years now, who I'm a big fan of. That's more like the Pocatello, Rigby area, where they've got some pretty good football players over from there. Won the state championship. Rigby won the state championship this last year. And then you got a couple of other younger guys that I know that Nate was excited about. Ire Adolfo whose brother Tiger won a state championship as a quarterback at Rigby several years ago. Ray is more of he's a defensive lineman and offensive lineman as well. And they got some size in this team. There's a couple of guys that when Nate said, Carter Effington, who's a 6'6", 210-pound offensive tackle. You got Gage French, who's a 6'6", 220-pound edge rusher. So some good size down there in eastern Idaho. And then you go down into Utah. Pro Trenches, Tuning Canuch, Amon Giles and Logan Shuck are two of the players that I know are kind of those upperclassmen that are starting to get some attention. I know Blair Angulo, who my colleague at 24/7 went out and saw them at an event a couple of weeks ago and kind of raved about those two guys. And then OFA, they've got a couple of their players are going to be on the road taking visits because we're now into visit season, but they've got V.E. Benjamin out of Lehigh High School, who was one of the top 5 offensive linemen at the Polynesian Bowl Combine last month. Shane Johnson, who was one of the Polynesian Bowl offensive line MVPs out of Taylorsville. He reminds me a lot of Terrell Keane. If you remember Terrell a couple of years ago that played for Big 12, he's at Arizona State now, on that team that had 3 future Oregon linemen with Fox Crater and oh goodness,
Yeah, that was
Trent
that loaded
Ferguson,
group.
Devin Brooks. Terrell Kim was the one who literally won just about every single rep for them, but he would wear those glasses. And I called them Big Game James. And Shane Johnson, he comes out in these glasses, and you're like, this guy in the glasses isn't going to beat me, and then he would beat the hell out of you. So he's a guy that I know Will's really excited about. I got to see him at Polynesian Bowl Combine. And then PJ Takitaki, he's a defensive lineman, also out of Lehigh High School. He's committed to BYU. So it's exciting because I mentioned O lineman, I mentioned D lineman, all kinds of guys in the trenches. And, this is what gets me excited about this time of year is, we're getting close to the college showcases. And, as much as 7-on-7 really exists from January to June, the big boys still need love too. Those games are won in the trenches. And now we get the chance to see some really, really good offensive linemen and kind of get a chance to see some guys that potentially could emerge.
I know when it hits Huff different because we text every day. We're not on phone calls every day, but every couple of days, but definitely text. And there's usually kind of the time, I'm a vampire, so I don't ever sleep anyway. So I'm, up late, or till the early morning. Huff is like most normal human beings, goes to sleep and actually gets sleep. But last night, I'm texting him at my normal hours and I'm getting responses right away and like exclamation points and long responses back. So we were talking the 5-on group and I'm sending him the teams and the list. And yes, it definitely, that's that, kind of sit up in your chair, like let me get fresh here. Let me just kind of get the blood flowing because I've been slouched. That's that feeling that I got from Huff on this, which gets me excited because I know when it moves the needle with Huff, trust folks. It's like, when you see a group of people and they all start screaming and running a direction, you don't need to ask anything. You just run. And when Huff gets excited about something, it's that same equivalent. Like it's for a reason. Like this dude knows what he's talking about.
Well,
When he sees names and rosters, yes, it's
if you tune into our podcast each week, I'm usually sitting in my regular desk chair, but I sat in my producer's chair for this one. This is the longest podcast we've ever done. DeAndre's like, you guys brought me on and you never let me talk. And you've been talking for like 90 minutes. We keep going, but that's how geeked I am about, watching
Yeah.
the linemen. Not that I don't want to watch the 7-on too, because there's some really good players, but, you're in a region in the country too, where there are some damn good linemen that are coming from Utah and Idaho. I mean, the top 2 players in the state of Idaho this year are both offensive linemen. We're going to see one of them. Um, it's kind of a sneaky good area,
Yes.
Idaho for O line and D linemen. Obviously Utah has been known forever for their linemen. But then you go into Washington. Washington could have a first rounder from the state in the offensive line this year. And a potential second rounder in the defensive line with JTT, and you got a couple of teams from Washington coming over. So, this is a good region to, it's never going to have the depth that a Texas, a Georgia, Florida, even Southern California is going to have. But don't sleep on that. And I hate that phrase. I can't believe I just used it.
But all
Goodness
these
gracious.
schools, up to your point, they're all coming in to recruit these guys. You mentioned guys with offers, and you mentioned schools that it's like they have offers from every region, so they're coming in. It's real. It might not be to offer 18 guys like if you're going into LA or into Dallas, but they're definitely offering these guys, and they're making impacts on college rosters and making it into the NFL. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see. It's going to be a fun weekend. As I said, we're going to have the whole vibe out there, the food trucks and the music going and the whole setup. So should be a lot of fun. One thing D, really with you being kind of the specialist on this as a receiver, to talk about, because one thing I've seen in the 7-on space is, and it can be controversial to people new to it, is the press. When receivers get pressed by a DB, and new people to it are going, hey, they don't think there's any contact. And it's like, no, there's no tackling, but there's contact. They can press. So talk about that, of what you see from receivers, like your thoughts on that, because they're getting pressed and coaches need to, I think, do a better job of teaching them how to get off a press, and then scheming. If your kids can't get off a press, put them in stacks and bunches, go in motion, take that pressure off them. But talk about that lens, and then we'll wrap this up. I just wanted to get that perspective while you're on this podcast with us.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yes, no, what I've seen is I've seen, like you said, like there've been complaints about receivers being held and that defensive backs can't press them. And that's not actually what's happening. What's happening is a lot of receivers, what I'm saying is when a defensive back is pressing them, their hands are down, right? And that's one thing that I teach every receiver, whether you're a receiver, running back, tight end, if you're lining up and there's a guy right in front of you, you should never have your hands down because that just invites him to get into your chest. Now, that's what ends up happening, right? Once he gets into your chest, now you can't go downfield easily. And now you feel like he's holding you, and that should be a penalty. And that's not a penalty. As long as the defensive back is able to slide and move his feet and stay in front of you while he keeps his hands on your chest, he can do that. Now, what happens is once you're able, as a receiver, once you're able to get him off and get his hands off of you, which is what you need to be able to do, right? Get his hands off of you, then you can get by him. Now, if he's still holding, then that's when, the refs will throw a holding flag, right? But you have to be able to, as a receiver, you have to be able to have a strategy against press coverage because just running right at him and not trying to get around him is what I've seen receivers do. And then they're like, hey, then they're on the ground and they're like, hey, he threw me to the ground. It was like, well, he didn't throw you to the ground. He slid his feet. You weren't able to get around. And then the play was over. Now, what I also see too is as I see defenders when they have a player that they know doesn't have great technique to get off the press, they overdo it sometimes. And what they overdo it from the standpoint of, yeah, they're pressing them, but then they'll do the extra shove and the extra push, right? At the end. That's when, the refs are stepping in, like they're giving the warning to be like, hey, you don't need all that, right? Because that's not needed. The play is over. You already know the receiver isn't going to make the play. Quarterback isn't throwing the ball, right? Now just ease up because that's what they're going to ask you to do, not just in 707, but that's what they're going to ask you to do in college, right? Because it doesn't take all that because then you run into what possibly can happen as such as injuries, right? Unnecessary injuries just from you trying to do too much. So those are some of the things that I've seen, but more so from the receiver standpoint is that guys just need to come to the line of scrimmage with a plan, right? If somebody's right in front of you, you need to have a plan to get around them and get their hands off of you. But from a defensive back perspective, as long as you're sliding your feet, you're keeping your hands inside, and you're not grabbing and jerseys being pulled, then you should have good. That's considered good coverage.
Beautiful. Well, people, if you want more info on that, DeAndre, one of the best receiver trainers out there, so hit him up. He'll come to you, get some work. He does some camps and travels around, so I highly recommend it. Tap in with him and get more info on that, or talk to him this weekend and pick his brain. We're out there. It's a chance to come in and talk, introduce yourself, and develop a relationship, exchange info, and get that going with him because it will be very beneficial for you. So thank you for tuning in. This was a fun episode. This is going to be a really fun weekend. Come out. It's at Eagle High School. Saturday, we start games, I think, at 10:30 or 11 o'clock. We go all the way until 9. Sunday, we'll be going in the morning until the afternoon. 5-on-5 is going to start in that kind of probably 1 o'clock time frame and go for a couple hours. So it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of headliner names of players and teams and programs. Come on out, be fun vibes, and we will see you out there. Fourth annual Gem State Showcase.